There is a nice example of how New York City at some point had to decide whether they'll spend a few $100 million on setting up filters for their drinking water system, or they would use natural ecosystems, forests through which the water flowed to the supply station as a natural filter. So they actually did the second, and they are very happy with that. So this is kind of along those way. Tale of three Himalayan towns. Would payment for ecosystem services make drinking water supply sustainable? Here are the key findings. We'll read a bit more about conclusion. Water scarcity has been increasing in Himalayan towns as natural springs are drying up. Investing in physical infrastructure alone does not help protect water sources that are mainly located upstream or other watersheds. Incentive payment to the water source communities for protecting watersheds helps reducing conflict between water users and upstream communities. So water sharing is always a complicated issue, whether upstream people have all the rights to keep whatever they want, or the downstream people have some rights to access that water, and so on. Often, obviously, you need a nice relation between the two communities to make things sustainable anyways. It requires an institution that plays a role of an intermediary in this sense between upstream communities and downstream water users. Activities proposed by water source communities, in this case Dhahran, Dakunta and Dashrath Chand are the three towns. So we are talking about ecosystem services here to maintain the watershed integrity: grazing management, toilet construction, landslide protection, agricultural improvements, riparian buffers. Dakunta had seeds distribution, irrigation facilities, training programs, agricultural feeder roads, and land preparation. In Dashrath Chand, they had toilet construction, grazing management, off-season vegetation farming, training on non-timber forest products collection and marketing, provision of piped water in the village. So you can see these are fairly serious, not interventions, but adaptations brought about by these coordinating intermediaries. Conclusion: the three PS schemes for drinking water projects discussed in this chapter suggest that such schemes can be an effective tool in making drinking water projects sustainable, where there is a clear distinction between water users and providers. For a sustainable system that avoids conflict, which may arise due to uncertainties resulting from climate change, it is suggested to provide incentive payment for ecosystem managers based on their activities. I have to take care of something here. Give me a sec. Sorry about that. We always have these issues to deal with when I do all this from my apartment, because it's got a nice lake view that I can keep looking at. The office is kind of boring. So anyway, coming back to the conclusion, the three PES schemes, I'm going to read it again. PS is payment for ecosystem services, and IPES is incentive payment for ecosystem services. For drinking water projects discussed in this chapter suggest that such schemes can be an effective tool in making drinking water projects sustainable, where there is a clear distinction between water users and providers. So once you start paying incentives, it is always a question of how to fund the incentive mechanism and how to sustain it, and whether the incentives have to be paid forever, or there is some evolution of understanding that this is something good for everybody involved, upstream communities as well as downstream users. For a sustainable system that avoids conflict, which is also important, which may arise due to uncertainties resulting from climate change. So you set up an incentive system based on what is happening today, but climate change may come about and maybe require renegotiating the entire deal. In this case, it's suggested to provide incentive payment for ecosystem managers based on their activities. So again, there are always payments that can serve as oiling the wheels, so that the system keeps moving. These case studies clearly indicate that incentive payment for ecosystem services schemes provide both immediate and long-term benefits to both sides. The immediate benefit for water users is the minimization of the potential risk of an obstruction of the water supply by the water source community, so that water keeps coming. In the long run, such a scheme contributes to uplift the livelihood of water source households through incentive payments, which can be invested in income generating activities, and ensures the sustainable supply of the quality and quantity of water to the users. In addition, IPS considered in the 3 case studies also focuses on improving the sanitation infrastructure, toilets construction, and paid water supply in the water source community, which not only contributes to improve water quality for water users but also improves the health of the water source households. So there are co-benefits on health. Obviously, every time you improve water use, toilets and groundwater contamination is reduced, etc. Looking at another example, waste segregation at source, a strategy to reduce waterlogging in Sylhet. Cities around the world have higher risk of waterlogging due to climate change. Managing city wastes can help against the threat of waterlogging, which would help to build resilience for cities in developing countries. Increasing awareness by targeting women is the best strategy for ensuring at-home segregation to reduce the volume of solid waste. So women often are the primary handlers of waste at home in developing countries because they are not as large in number in terms of going to work, so most of them stay home and take care of families. So wind is beginning to pick up, sorry about that. There is a need to consider motivational approaches in campaigning that would work for women. So women are specific targets in this case. So alternative waste management systems can then look like this. You have household production, so you have existing disposal system and an alternative disposal system proposed. So you have collection after sorting and segregation, recycling and reuse markets. As I mentioned, these are suspect, so constantly they have to be monitored in terms of the collection side. And then there are dump sites where disposal and natural decomposting is supposed to happen. There are issues of emissions, methane, etc. But also many times things that are supposed to be recyclable are simply dumped because the collectors and the markets don't consume them, or there's not enough of a profit in making that happen, and so on. The alternative disposal system then says production, sorting and segregation, recycling and reuse markets remain on this side. On the collector side, you have collection and composting, and you have organic fertilizer markets trying to use some of the waste to convert to organic fertilizers. So you have additional income source, additional avenues for making money, and then you have disposal again. Okay. Does that work? Well, maybe with awareness programs. So you have workshops, trainings, and campaigns for club counselors here for awareness program. Collectors do the composting after training. Households do door-to-door. Campaigns are done door-to-door for households, especially focused on women. And this is how the awareness materials look. It's in Bengali, so I won't go into it. So this is something from the Asian Center for the Development. So obviously brochures, simple hints as we said, and awareness programs do work, especially when women are involved. Conclusions from this part: cities around the world have higher risk of waterlogging due to climate change. Previous research has shown that without developing a proper waste management policy, investment in drainage infrastructure is likely to fail. Okay, so you can build infrastructure, drainage, etc., but at the other end you need proper waste management policy. There is a need to develop a mechanism to reduce the risk of clogging of the city drainage system, which is a huge problem, especially because you may build the drainage system for a maximum of, let's say, 100 millimeter per day of rain rates, and then climate change jumps you to 150 or 200 then. And there are of course other issues of awareness, people dumping stuff into the drainage tracks that shouldn't be dumped, and so on. This research was a follow-up to find strategies to increase household level participation. Based on previous surveys, it was also observed that women are at the center of waste management in a typical urban household in Bangladesh. Consequently, this research has used motivational approaches to motivate households to participate and dispose of their garbage in an orderly fashion. The team ran a campaign in selected localities for 14 days, 2 periods of 7 days each, in order to A. pursue households to separate their kitchen wastes for community level composting, B. make the city clean and smart given the climate risks. Okay. The 4 motivational approaches I will read off again before we go to the next section of the book, which is the last section. 4 motivational approaches were used. Social persuasion, kind of a peer pressure, works in many ways. Moral persuasion, saying this is our duty and we must do it for the common good and our own good. Economic incentives, easier to implement. And social recognition, to motivate the city dwellers to separate their kitchen wastes. There are extrinsic values where social recognition helps your image, your sense of power, and you participate when there is some social recognition involved for doing something which you should be doing anyways. All household members present at the time in the household were motivated to participate in the activities, but the campaign also ensured that the main women in the house were present at the time of the campaign. Our results show that social and moral persuasion and the strategy of social recognition worked well, and it is the women members in the house who were more motivated by such campaigns. There is just something intrinsic about women wanting to keep the house clean, neighborhood clean, surroundings clean, and so on. Women are not particularly attracted by the economic incentives shown in our campaign. Maybe good news, maybe because the economic benefit is small compared to the income of the household. In terms of participation in managing household wastes, the campaign resulted in greater motivation in women to manage their wastes responsibly. Finally, in terms of social recognition, it was also evident that all the prize winners were women. Go women! Right? So we'll come back and look at alternative livelihood, which basically is the last couple of chapters that we will go through and close out this section of the adaptation course on community resilience insights from South Asia. Okay.